Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today started in real estate as an agent before getting into rehab projects. He's expanded his predominantly single-family portfolio to include investments in over 150 multifamily units. Carlos Gutierrez joins us today. Carlos, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity of having me on the show.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Really looking forward to our chat. So let's dive into your real estate goals right now. What are you looking to do with real estate?
So I'm primarily focused on multifamily. Have been focused in the last 4 to 5 years in multifamily. Mostly value add, mostly in the Southeast. And to keep for long-term wealth, not to reposition or sell off quickly. I want to buy and hold for 10, 15, 20 years unless I get a significant offer.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes those big checks are hard to turn down. So
they are hard, especially in this market when a lot of people are looking, brokers are calling you up every week trying to say, hey, whatever you want for your property, hey, we'll pay for it. It's kind of hard not to say no.
Yeah. And, for you building your portfolio, do you set targets for yourself? Like, let's say, do you say, I want to acquire X number of units a year or X number of dollar volume?
I do. I do. Like Grant Cardone says, 10X what you think. I started out mindset wise 7 or 8 years ago, really small, baby steps.
Yeah.
And I've read in a couple of books that it takes the same amount of effort to buy a single family house than it is to buy 100 units.
Yeah.
So I have kind of in the last 3 to 4 years have changed my mindset to go for like a duplex or a quad to going out and buying 50, 70, 100, 150 units.
Yeah, no, and like you said, it's absolutely true. On this show, we have guests that are buying, $100 million properties, and they swear those ones are way easier than buying a small little deal.
I haven't bought $100 million worth of real estate, but I've bought, $2 or $3 million worth of real estate. And those are generally easier than say, $500,000 quad or a duplex or trying to flip a single family house. They just take the same amount of effort, and it's just you're not dealing with such a sophisticated group. I would say the people above 8, 5, 10, 15 million you're dealing with business owners and professionals versus pop shop owners that are a little bit more difficult to deal with.
Yeah, no, that's so true. So what do you think it was that you mentioned Grant Cardone and his 10X message? What do you think it was that allowed you to kind of open your mind and realize that you were thinking too small?
Well, the thinking too small was definitely just Grant Cardone. I don't really agree 100% of what everything he says, which, that's neither here or there, but that 10X mindset for me, he kind of opened up. But like a lot of investors, my mindset really opened probably 6 or 7 years before with Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, which a lot of people, a lot of professional and successful investors have. I read that first book, that Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then Cash Flow Quadrant, and then that really opened up my mindset. I've always had an entrepreneurial like mindset and background, but it was more of hard work. Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of opened up my mind from, washing cars and cutting grass to, building wealth and gaining assets.
Yeah. Well, and like I mentioned when I was introducing you, you started off as an agent in real estate. So, talking about the cash flow quadrant, you were on the self-employed on the left side of the quadrant, right?
I was, yeah. And the reason why I became an agent, I didn't really get into real estate to become an agent and buy and sell houses. I'm not an HGTV guy that loves to walk through houses and look at houses. It's just not me. I've seen them all kind of. But I was in my early career, I wanted to flip homes. That's what I was focused on, 2009, 2010. And the agents that I was using or working with, they were, instead of encouraging me to buy a good deal, they were like walking me back away from the deal. The deal has mold. The house is way too many problems. So after the third deal that I lost, I said, you know what, I can't keep listening to all these agents that are not investor friendly. And I said, I'm just going to go out there and get my real estate license and buy and sell my own deals. And I've been doing that since 2010. And I still to today still flip houses.
Yeah. And, you bring up a good point, and especially in my experience, because I started off on the residential brokerage side too. Let's say 95% of the agents out there, they're good in a retail, typical sale environment, but they don't understand the investment side of the game. So if you're just selling your normal house, it's great. We can walk through, but like it's a different way of looking at real estate as an asset.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we want the mold. We want the leaky. We want the smell of dog. We want all that stuff because we all know that's called value add, and that's where we're going to make money. If a house is perfect, there's no motivation for the seller to sell or the bank to sell a foreclosure at a good price. So, that's what we look for as investors. And there are, I'm not gonna badmouth agents because there are some good investor friendly agents out there. It's just like you said, most of them are brokerage and residential buy and sell mindset, and they're great agents out there. I worked with a lot of them in Northern Virginia that were good, and but they didn't have the mindset of an investor, and that's what I needed at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what would you say is the number one challenge right now in your business?
Right now it's the opposite of 2010. So in 2010, I could close my eyes and throw a dart and find a good deal, right?
Yeah.
There was no money and no investors and no brokerages and no banks willing to lend on dicey deals. It's now completely the opposite. Now you have everybody throwing money at you saying, hey, when's your next deal? But I can't find a good deal, nor will I overpay for a deal. And that's where I think my focus now is to find the best deals possible at the best price. But it's my biggest hurdle, finding deals.
Yeah. So what sort of things have you had to change about how you look at your business then to make sure you still have that deal flow?
Right. So we had to kind of get back down to the basics. Instead of working directly with brokers and finding deals through brokers, I've actually just gotten down to old school driving around or sending letters to owners. The last two deals that I've gotten, the first two deals that I got in multifamily were through letters directly to the seller. And that's how you find the motivated sellers, and that's how you get a good price, because you might have a motivated seller, but you also have a broker telling him or her how much you can pull out of this deal. Yeah. And not to say that brokers are bad, but that's their job when they're representing the listing agent or the seller as a listing agent.
Yeah, for sure. And so, as you're building your portfolio, have you hit any let's say, plateaus where, you were kind of stagnant for a bit? And if so, how did you break through those?
Yeah. So the plateau happened right around late 2017, early 2018, mid 2017, early 2018. We couldn't find a house to flip. We couldn't find a multifamily deal that was outrageous. I couldn't even buy a house that I would even pay to just rent out, I was just, when you're sitting on capital, we all know that if your capital is sitting, it's not making any money. So, and that's where I see the problem with a lot of investors, that they're just out there looking for yield and have money in their pockets, burning a hole in them, and they're kind of just throwing money out there. So that was our biggest plateau in that time frame, and really, like I said, getting back down to the basics and trying to find a deal, digging, looking for underneath rocks to find the deal, really.
Yeah. And so How does that translate to routines and rituals that you have developed? Because I'm sure you've got a couple, that have really kind of kept pushing your business forward.
Yeah, so we started. I purchased the software to kind of put our multifamilies in a more automated way of doing things, like the accounting and the work orders and everything. That because I'm more of a mom and pop shop multifamily owner. I'm not a huge syndicator, so I manage. I don't personally manage them, but I manage the management company, which could be a hassle in its own. Yeah. So we purchased some software so we can keep that in line, so then we can get back to what we're best at, and that's finding good deals.
Yeah.
And so one of the strategies we kind of did was put the multifamilies and even the single family flips on automation almost.
Yeah. And
you still need to work in the business, but it's less of working in the business and more of trying to acquire property.
Yeah. And how inside your head do you manage? Because like flipping takes a different skill set than a long-term buy and hold. How do you make sense of, if you've got a flip and then you have, a multifamily going at the same time?
That could be I usually tell my wife, like, don't be so upset if I'm always on the phone or out on the road here in the next couple of months, because even in the last couple of months, I had a flip, a refinance of a rental, a refinance of a multifamily, 41 units, and a new 54 unit that we were going all after in the same 2 months. So, I'm only one person, she's only one person, and, and I have a couple of partners, but other than that, we're taking on most of the work. So it's just a different mindset. When the single families we've put on autopilot, where I've got a contractor that pretty much takes care of everything. A little bit less profit, but less headache as well.
Yeah.
And then the multifamily, we've got a management company that manages it, so I only have to manage them maybe a couple hours a week or a couple of phone calls, if there's fires. So it could be hectic, but it could be done.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about a keystone deal. So a deal that made a big impact on you and your business. Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, so that was I would say the first multifamily that I purchased, because it took me from a mindset of I could never own 50 units, 20 units, 100 units. It's a mindset shift. I was already flipping houses for about 5 years, but actually getting that first deal under contract, whether it's 4 or 20 or 150, it just shifts your mind to know that you can actually buy those assets. That it's not $1 billion guys buying all these assets. You know what I mean? So it's actually a funny story. We moved from Northern Virginia, my wife and I and my kids, down to Summerville, South Carolina. And we were here visiting the first time, and I came across, we were looking for a place to eat because the kids were hungry and we were all hungry, and we happened to stop by. And when I looked across the street, I saw an 8-plex that was you could tell it was abandoned. But then the rest of the street looked fine, and there was other quads and sixplexes and 8plexes. So I'm like, huh. So I wrote that address down on my phone, and then a year later after we moved, I was like, oh, let me send this guy a letter. Sent him a letter. He called me back and said, are you interested in buying the 8plex? And I said, yeah, if we can come to an agreement on, I know it needs a lot of rehab. He goes, yeah, and he started down this road of how much work it needs and how he's tired of everything. And he goes, actually, if you're interested in that 8plex, are you interested in the 20 that I own on that street? And I said, well, yes, sure. I'm definitely interested. So long story short, we ended up purchasing 20 units on that street, which they're kind of next to each other. So it was easy to manage. So that one always is close to my heart, because it took a fairly amount of time, took a fairly amount of effort, but it's one of my most profitable multifamilies that we own.
Yeah, and it pays to go and eat food at some point sometimes.
Yeah, and the funny part is that our GPS took us to that spot that there used to be a Subway, but that Subway was no longer there. It got turned into something else. So now my wife's like, all right, we got to find somewhere else to eat. So that's when I was just sitting there and looking forward, and it was literally right in front of me. I'm like, that building is just sitting there, not being used. I'm sure, and there's plenty. I know the area needed rentals because they had a ton of infusion of people moving to the area. So yeah, just it worked out.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. So that building was sitting there abandoned for a long time. Why do you think nobody else did anything about it?
You know, I keep telling myself that to this day, and that we bought that in 2016, so 3 years ago. I don't know. I think it was too far gone, kind of. So like the structure on the outside was great. It was brick. You know, the roof needed to be redone, but still it was there. Windows were there. There was a couple of broken windows, but everything was there for me. Walking inside was a different story. You could tell it had been used for the hangout, and it was destroyed inside, drywall destroyed, you know, but nothing that I was afraid of. Foundation was fine. You know, trusses were fine. Structurally, it was fine. Yeah, I don't know to tell you why. I tell my wife that all the time. I don't know. I mean, why would you leave that there by itself? It's not like it's in a bad area where you don't have other rentals or the other places are boarded up. You know, so I couldn't answer that question. That was just the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and so you did a pretty heavy lift inside. Was your game plan to do a refi, you know, after that was completed?
Yes.
Like, how did you work it?
Yeah. So I structured it. I've always structured my deals to where I want to be the owner at the end. So whether it's with a partner at the end or by myself at the end, because to me, that's where my value is. I don't really care about taking a ton of money out of it in the beginning because I want an asset to pay me cash flow. I'm more interested in cash flow than equity at this point. Maybe that will change when I gain more assets, but right now I'm interested in cash flow and units. So I talked to a couple of folks, and one person was interested, partner, and I gave him a certain amount of equity, and he put the cash in it as well as I did. And then I said, when we refinance this thing, we'll pay you back out your portion and then part of the equity. And he was fine with it. He was pretty hands off. He was in Atlanta. We actually are good friends to this day. We still partner on other deals, but I told him that from the get-go. This is what I want. I want a partner that can, you know, infuse some money into it, get this asset flowing, and then pay them back out, and then me keep it. And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So yeah, that's how we structured it.
Yeah. I like this deal. I think there's some really good lessons in there. I think first of all, you never know, you always have to try and make contact about a deal because like you said, like nobody else had approached this guy and picked it up.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great story. And especially, you know, if you see Subway on your GPS, you might want to go check it out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I tell people all the time, like when they want to get in real estate, I'm like, real estate is a touchy-feely type of a business. It's not a sit behind the computer and look all day. You have to actually drive out there. And I enjoy driving by the places because one, I learned the area. Two, I learned, you know, the different areas and what rents and what doesn't, what looks like crap and what looks good and what has changed in the last couple of years where, you know, hey, I could have bought this 2 years ago and look at what my equity would have been now.
Yeah.
So I tend to drive around a lot in different places for those particular reasons.
Yeah.
Because I've even bought flips like that. Houses that look empty, send them a letter, try to give them a call and, hey, oh, look at that. You found the deal, you know?
Yeah.
You can read all the books in the world. You can go to all the seminars in the world, but you've got to get out there and do it.
Yeah, well, 100%. I think that's going to be the quote for this episode.
There you go.
that is so true. So how has getting involved in real estate changed your life so far?
It's changed it. It's changed it dramatically. So I came from humble beginnings. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. So, I came from humble beginnings. My wife came from some humble beginnings herself. So um, since I've been in real estate, I have multiplied my wealth and my net worth and so on and so forth. I was, being able to take care of my kids and my family very well compared to if I would have had the same job that I had in 2008, 2009. So it's definitely helped. And it's one of those businesses that keeps growing and keeps paying you and keeps growing and keeps paying you. So, it's done wonders for my family.
Yeah. And you mentioned, 10Xing things. So in 10 years, where do you see your business going?
So in 10 years, I have a plan of buying 100 to 150 units every 2 years.
Nice.
So 75 every year, 150 every 2 years, whatever comes first. So I would like to have, 800, 1,000 units under my belt in 10 years, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. I'm giving myself some lofty goals. Depends how the market goes. Some people are waiting for the market to crash. Other people are still buying like crazy.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's my ultimate goal.
Yeah. Well, nobody has a crystal ball, right? So it's hard. And I've never seen somebody perfectly time a market.
No. Nor do I try. I think if it's a good deal, you buy it today, and if it makes money in 2 or 3 years, then it makes money. If you come out even, then you didn't lose any money. The idea is not to lose any money, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right. So, and to have, we want a big goal, 10 years, 10X, but you also, like when I first started, I wanted a very simple goal. I wanted the income from my asset to pay for my expenses. That was still to this day, I still go by that goal. I want to retire myself and my wife and then start working on, leaving legacy money for my kids.
Yeah. And what is that? What does that legacy look like for you? Because, I've got a son as well, and that's something that's in my mind all the time.
Right. So my legacy for me is kind of like two tiers. So I want to own assets, especially close to me, where I can teach my kids work ethic. I think we don't teach kids enough work ethics these days. I might sound old, but if I have an asset that's close to me, and let's say somebody leaves and we got to turn the apartment, I usually pay somebody to turn the apartment, obviously, but what a great way to teach your kids, hey, how to paint, how to pull a toilet, how to, change out a breaker, how to work on an AC unit, how to do some plumbing. Those are life lessons that you should teach your kids, girl or boy, doesn't matter. That's one legacy that I want to leave them, is with some good work ethic and to tell them, hey, listen, this wasn't just handed to me, and this is not just going to be handed to you. Because we know what happens when you hand somebody something without the work.
Yeah.
And then 2, my big legacy is I want to build something. I want my name to say, hey, that guy, worked hard, build some assets, left some assets for his kids and his family, and then his kids can build assets for their kids. And I want to lay the foundation for the future. My kids, their wives, their husbands. Everything. I want that. That's my big why.
Yeah.
That's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think, unless you are very clear with your why, you'll fall off you'll fall off the cart at some point. So
1,000% agree. I read a Gary Keller. I was with Keller Williams when I was.
Okay. Yeah.
And I read Gary Keller's book. And when I first started, I didn't really get it. He's like, your big why has to be big, and it has to wake you up in the morning, and it has to drive you. And I didn't really get that until I got into the business. And, when you get those phone calls at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, or a difficult client that doesn't want to budge, or that why has to be bigger than that situation, because if not, guess what you do? You just throw your hands up and say, I'm done. You know,
Yeah.
This is not for me.
Yeah.
That why will drive you through that bad situation, that crap.
Yeah. No, that is so true. And, there is crap that comes along in real estate.
There is.
So
There is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Carlos, if somebody's looking to reach out, get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
So you can go to cg4properties.com, or you can email me at cg4properties@gmail.com, or phone number, Facebook, social media, all that stuff. We're pretty easy to get a hold of.
So sounds good. Yeah, well, I'll make sure we include the link so people can just click and find your website. Well, okay. Carlos, just want to say thanks so much for taking the time today. I really enjoyed the deal you were talking about and all the good tips you had.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Anytime.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.